Welcome, soul brothers and sisters. Today is about letting go. How do we let the past go? How do we move on from a relationship where we've felt so deeply, where we've been so profoundly connected to another human being? How do we just let that go? How do we forget about that? And maybe it's not about forgetting. Maybe it's not about ignoring or suppressing. And so when we have difficulty in letting go, sometimes our perspective is skewed. The way that we see the world and the way that we're feeling ourselves is not quite accurate, in the sense that it's skewed, or it's where we're seeing the world with the opposite of rose-colored glasses, and we're only focusing on this thing that we call loss. But where there's a loss, there has to be a gain. You know, it's said that life occurs in reasons, seasons, and lifetimes. Maybe you're on the side, and I heard this story just earlier today around the reason piece. Maybe you're on the side of the road and your tire is flat, and someone, a stranger that you've never met before, comes and helps you and gives you assistance, and you never see that person again, and on your way you go. And that's a reason. Maybe we experience relationships in seasons. Maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year, maybe it's 12 months, maybe it's 5 or 10 years. And it's a season of relating. And there's value there, and I'm going to come into that in a moment. And sometimes, which is very rare, we have these relationships, or this relationship to an idea, to a belief. It's not just people, right? So we can have a relationship to an ideology, a religion, a spirituality, a practice. And of course, we can have these relationships with people that are rare. They're rare for a relationship to last a lifetime. A lifetime being from where you are in that point in your life where you meet that person, or you have that relationship to when you physically pass. And that's a rarity. And so we start understanding, why is it so difficult to let go? And it's so difficult to let go because we invest so much of ourselves in that relationship, or that idea, or that belief, or that thing. We invest so much of who we are in that relationship. And from there we struggle to let go, because we're attaching so much meaning to this relationship. And at some point we have to think of this. This is probably the crux of this video. At some point we have to think that if we're letting go of something that actually provided us with value. And instead of being attached to the necessity of needing that thing or that relationship to experience that value, that dynamic gives us insight into our ability to create that value for ourselves. Let that sit and sink in just for a moment. Let that, just be with that for a moment. If we're letting something go, it meant at some point in our existence, in that dynamic, in that interaction, that it carried so much value. And we can still derive that value. Remember, reasons, seasons, lifetimes, or lifetime, depending on which way you look at it. And so instead of seeing this letting go as something that's really challenging, and it can be, by the way, I'm not taking that experience away from anyone. And sometimes it needs to be challenging, because in that challenge we grow into the new version of self. We start shedding the layers of the old, and we start creating a new version of self. And that becomes deeply, deeply empowering. And so as we move through that and we start peeling back the layers of loss, we realize, again, as I said at the beginning, there is a gain there, but we just can't see it at the time. And in a moment I'll get to how do we allow ourselves to feel, because feeling is healthy, right? It's safe to be sad. We have to tell ourselves this, that it's safe to be sad, because the moment that we believe that it's safe to grieve and to experience grief and to grieve the loss, the moment we know it's safe to feel sad and it's safe to have that sense of loss, we're honoring ourselves and we're honoring the process. And then from here, grief, actually the process of allowing ourselves to feel and feel fully, grief allows us, it instigates this honoring of the connection that we had. So we begin to focus on the value that it gave us instead of what we're not having and what we're not experiencing anymore. And so we go through a process of feeling, we go through a process of grieving. And And when we go through this, we allow ourselves to feel fully. We allow ourselves to be sad, to experience instead of suppress. And when we suppress, we ignore. When we ignore and we numb, we're missing out on a part of self. There's a wholeness to us. And when we negate those parts of self that are really difficult and really uncomfortable to meet, and I spoke to this in another video about our ugly. Our ugly is beautiful, but we perceive it to be ugly and therefore we push it away. So we push away these uncomfortable feelings such as sadness, such as loss, such as grief, and we don't allow ourselves to go through that process. We actually don't allow ourselves to honor the relationship or what we're perceiving to be losing. And if we don't honor the relationship, we can never extract the value. And so we're in this constant state of deficit and scarcity. And so we think that we're losing in life consistently. And how, if we're losing in life, are we going to be satisfied, content, and full in life? We're not going to feel whole. The grieving process brings that energy into completion. And so we move into wholeness by allowing ourselves to grieve, to experience grief and to grieve. And so what we don't want to do is go to unhealthy suppressants, such as drugs, such as alcohol, such as unconscious ways of dealing with our pain, overworking, numbing ourselves out on television. Now, that's not to say that we can't have conscious distractions. We can't move into breath, sound, and movement. For me personally, and something that saved me in my life, is the practice of breath, sound, and movement. Breath could be literally a deep breathing technique that helps calm the nervous system down. An example of that could be box breathing. 4 seconds inhale, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds exhale, 4 seconds hold. Or rhythmic smooth breathing, 6 seconds inhale, 8 seconds hold, and make it very continuous, and that can relax the nervous system. And breathing, nasal breathing, can really help with that. Movement, for example, can be exercise, can be walking in nature, spending time in nature can be so helpful to help with the grieving process, to help us process. I do a lot of processing when I'm walking in nature, thinking, feeling into what I'm experiencing. And the sound part can be literally toning, can be sounding. We go, and we allow ourselves to go through that, extend that. Sound could be music therapy, sound therapy. You can have gong baths. There's so many different things you can do. Meditation, stillness practices, spending time with friends, laughing, playing. Bring that playful energy into your life when you're going through or experiencing loss and going through that grieving process. So it really becomes important that we focus on gratitude and we focus on what's working in life. Not so much what's not working, because we're just going to get more of what's not working. And so we have an opportunity to actually embrace loss and embrace the letting go process, because it means that we're opening ourselves up to something new. It means that we're giving ourselves an opportunity to experience life from a new perspective and a new place. And in doing so, that's where growth and expansion occurs, which is, for me, a prime directive of being alive and being human. And in that gratitude, we see so much of our truth. We see so much of who we are. And again, instead of focusing on that loss as something negative, that letting go becomes more seamless. It doesn't mean we don't hurt. It doesn't mean we don't experience pain. It doesn't mean we don't move through the fear. We have to allow ourselves to feel all that. And through a practice of breath, sound, and movement, whatever that looks like for you, you can equilibrate and neutralize that, gain a deep perspective and understanding, and feel your fucking feelings. That's what we don't do. We don't feel our fucking feelings. And in that numbing, it doesn't go away. We think it goes away, but it's still there, and it still drives so much of the experiences that we have in the world. And we'll then generally repeat the same experiences and the same relationships, because we're trying to mimic what we lost, because we think we're not enough if we don't have that in our lives. And I'm here to tell you that you are. And that's been a learning curve, and that's been a season. And it's been a season for growth and a season for transformation. So, brothers and sisters, many blessings to you, power to you, and I'll see you soon.